Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel, Outdoor Adventure TV. Today we are going to talk about gear, all the stuff that we take underground to be safe, be comfortable, and have a good time. Anyway, stick around, it's going to be fun. So when I started out, flashlights hadn't been invented yet. We had to carry torches. Okay, maybe it wasn't that bad. But I started with a bicycle helmet, this Princeton Tech Fuel headlamp, 3 LED bulbs, and this little cheap flashlight that came from the drugstore, about 15 little LED emitters in there. AAA batteries lasted maybe an hour or two. So I'm kind of glad those days are gone. We got really good gear now that you can get, and most of it's pretty fairly priced. So you don't have to go underground with stuff like this, and you don't have to spend a fortune. Now let's start out with what we wear. Of course, I always wear long pants and a long shirt, because everything underground is either sharp, or it's rusty, or it's pokey, like cactus. Those little pack rats drag that stuff in all the time. Can't tell you how many times I've crawled through that stuff. So everything is sharp, everything wants to poke you. Additionally, I always wear a pair of high top boots, and I wear those to protect my ankles, provide a little bit of protection from pokey things and things trying to get down inside my boot. Now I also wear gloves, different types of gloves. I've tried a lot of different types of pairs of gloves. Right now, the ones I'm trying out are these mechanics wear. I've used the real thin synthetic mechanics wear, but now I found these ones that have leather palms. And I think that's going to be a little bit better, a little bit more abrasion resistance, and probably good when we get on rope because it won't get as hot as the synthetic ones do. These also provide a lot of good dexterity because you want to be able to manipulate things. If you got to get your backpack, it's nice to be able to get in your backpack and fish things out without having to take your gloves off and throw them down and stuff like that. So, boots, long pants, long sleeve shirt, gloves, and then of course, a helmet. Okay, so let's talk about helmets a little bit. We've got climbing helmets, and we've got hard hats. Now the hard hat, picked up at Home Depot, relatively inexpensive. I mounted a headlamp on it. Now, this headlamp is made by Spark. It's got the emitter up here, battery pack in back, so it helps keep the balance nice. The downside to a hard hat is it doesn't have a chin strap. So if you look over the edge of a deep drift and all of a sudden this drops off, you may or may not be able to ever get down and recover it. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to be without your helmet. So if you're going to use something like this, the best choice is to put a chin strap on it, or use it only for single level mines when you know that there's not going to be inclines or drifts and things like that that you're going to be looking down. Now this is my helmet, the one that I use most of the time. It's mounted with a Oldham headlamp in it. Now this headlamp was retrofitted with LEDs by my friend Tony in England. This was an old English miner's headlamp, so it's got a little special meaning to me. And then it's got a battery pack in the back. Like most climbing helmets, it's got the chin strap. It's got a harness up inside to absorb any kind of an impact. I've seen so many YouTube videos where these explorers head underground with nothing but maybe a hat on or a beanie cap or something like that. That's not adequate. I've had a couple impacts where rocks have fallen from above, ricocheted off my helmet, and continued on. I think probably 2 of those instances I might have been knocked unconscious if I wasn't wearing a helmet like this. They were very hard impacts. You don't want to do that, and there's no reason not to. Even something like a hard hat is pretty darn inexpensive. So if you want to get underground or you want to try something like that, at a minimum have something like this, preferably a full-on climbing helmet. It's the best choice you can make. Okay, so let's talk about lights just a little bit. There's really 2 categories of lights that we're concerned with. One is headlamps, the other is handheld. Now, can you run down to the store, local hardware store or something like that, buy the cheapest light you can? Yeah. Would you go down to that same place and buy a parachute and jump out of an airplane? Would you go to that same place and buy a scuba regulator and then go down 100 feet underwater? Probably not. You want to buy quality lights. This one's been with me about 8 years now. Never let me down. Runs on rechargeable 18650 batteries. Just unscrew it, pop the battery out, put it in the charger, back in, ready to go again. Lights are safety gear. They're life support equipment. You have to have quality lights. I've been underground with a number of friends who have bought cheap lights and were an hour back into a mine and their lights go out. They just quit working. You don't want to buy cheap lights. You don't have to spend $300 or $400 on a light, although you can. But you do want to buy a good quality light. So do a little bit of research, find out some names of quality lights, and purchase something that's going to last you. The other thing I would recommend is if you buy a headlamp and a hand light, you probably want to get the same type of battery, because that way they're interchangeable between the lights and you don't have to carry as many in your backpack. Just think about it a little bit. Don't cheap out on your lights. So when I head underground, there's 2 things I always have in my pocket. One is a flashlight, but the other one is an assisted opening pocket knife. And I do that for a specific reason, and that's because when we go on rope, either rappelling down into a shaft or climbing our way back out, there's always the risk that hair or a shirt or something is going to get fouled in that mechanism. We need to be able to get our way out of it without having to have someone come down and rescue us. So what I do is I take this knife, and if I need to, I could draw it with one hand, open it up, and I'd be able to cut myself clear of whatever obstruction it is that's fouling my gear. I've luckily never had to use this, but it's always with me. Well, except when I go to England. They're not legal there. But the rest of the time, I've always got it with me. So let's talk just a little bit about some of the electronics that we have that make mine exploring both more interesting and maybe a little bit safer. So first I'm going to start out with my GPS. And I always keep a GPS with me so I can notate the location of every mine site that I happen to go to. We keep track of where it was, general area, and GPS coordinates, and then a description of what we found there and whether we want to go back. Because sometimes we don't have time to do a full explore, and that way we keep all that information right here in my field notebook, and I can always go back to any location, or just as importantly, I cannot go back to a location if it was like 50 foot back to a rat's nest. Now, the next piece of equipment I've got is a spot tracker. Now, a lot of you guys count on your cell phone as your emergency device, call for help or whatever it is. But a lot of places we go, there's no cell coverage. We're out of range of cell. So then what happens? Well, this is the answer to that problem. This will send a text message to whoever you designate sending the latitude and longitude of your current location. So when I get to a mine site, I go ahead and I send that coordinate, and that tells whoever's tracking me exactly where I'm getting ready to go in and explore a mine. Then when I come back out, I send a message that says, hey, everything's good, I'm out of the mine, don't worry about it. Now the thing is, when you're out in the middle of these huge deserts, if something were to happen, it could take days or weeks for them to even locate your car, much less actually start a search for you. So something like this will immediately allow somebody to know where you are and where to start a search. Additionally, this will dispatch search and rescue. So say we get out, somebody gets bit by a rattlesnake. I could actually push the send help button, the SOS button, and it will start a series of events that will send a rescue crew to my location and provide medical or evacuation. So this is a really important piece of equipment, something that you don't want to be without. Now lastly, this is a 4-gas meter. And when you head underground, this thing sniffs the air and it checks for gases that are dangerous or oxygen level that's low. So it's just one of those things that if you get into a mine that's got bad air, this will squawk, it'll send out a signal, a loud tone, and it will let you know that you're in trouble and you need to get out of there as quickly as possible. So these are the 3 bits of electronics that I use when I head out to go mine exploring. So what I want to do is talk just a little bit about a drawing that's coming up. When the channel gets to 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to have a drawing to give away these 2 books. We have Drills and Mills, and we have The Mining Camps Speak. Now, Drills and Mills is probably the best mining book I've ever read. It is jam-packed with explanations of how mines work, how they operated, all the way from timbering to drilling to mucking stuff out, even down to the accounting of how they kept track of all the minerals and stuff that they found. Absolutely fabulous book, and it's the one that got me interested and started in underground exploration. And then The Mining Camps Speak. The authors of this book went out to a number of old mining sites and ghost towns and stuff like that and took pictures of artifacts. Then they found matching catalogs from back in the day where those were being displayed and sold as the products. So when you go to an old mining camp and you're looking around and you're seeing stuff and you're not quite sure what it is, this book will show you pictures of some of that old stuff and what it would have looked like brand new. It's a really great cross-reference for you guys that like to ghost town or go to any of the old mining camps. Anytime we get to those areas, if we find a can field or an old junk pile, we always spend quite a bit of time looking through that just to see what the old stuff was. And this book will help you actually identify some of those old parts and what they would have looked like new. So when we get to 1,000, I'm giving these 2 away. So last but not least is my backpack. Now a backpack's important because you get to carry all your extra gear like water, food, emergency supplies, anything of that nature. Now for me, I like to keep my pack as small as possible, as light as possible, and although this is not a good example of it, I like to keep as few straps and mesh and stuff like that off of it that I can, because everything gets hooked on a nail or caught on a rock, a sharp protruding rock or something like that, and it jams you up. So if you're looking at a backpack, find one that doesn't have just straps every which way and try to keep it down and small. So when I first start out, my top little zipper pocket right here has got 3 pieces of gear that I use. One is a whistle, and that's for signaling if I'm at the bottom of a long shaft. Maybe it's the shaft has gone with a little bit of an arc, so I can't use my flashlight. Maybe we're too deep for somebody to hear. A whistle will penetrate a lot farther than will your voice or something else. And when we go, we usually set up a signal that says, 1 whistle means come down, 2 whistles means I'm coming up, and a series of long whistles means I'm in trouble and I need assistance. Another bit of information or piece of equipment that I have is a compass. Now, I do that not so much so I can find my way out, but to help me get an orientation sometimes when we're inside a mine. Some of these mines will have passages that go in different directions, and you kind of feel like this passage ought to be getting real close to this passage. And so sometimes this will help you determine if the passages are running parallel or coming together or whatever's going on. So this is just a nice little bit of information, helps you determine where you are to some extent. Just nice to have. And the last piece, of course, is a jeweler's loop. I always have one of these with me. Well, because I like to look at shiny things, especially if it's gold. I really like to look at it, but there's a lot of cute shiny rocks underground that I really like to look at. Okay, so let's dig into the next pocket. Let's see what we've got in here. Okay, backup flashlight. This is my Zebra. It's a headlamp. It's a Zebra light. It's a really nice light. Like it a lot. Notice it's a headlamp, so if something happens to my primary lamp, I could put this on my helmet and I still leave my hands free. So that's one bit of gear. Backup batteries. Got to keep backup batteries with you. Now this backup battery will fit either this lamp or my handheld flashlight. Carabiners. I always keep some carabiners with me. You just never know quite when you're going to need them, but they're really useful when you do. I also keep some rope in my backpack, so if I need to tie off to something, this would be how I would be able to do that. And then, of course, lastly, well, toilet paper. You know why. Next pocket, let's see what we find. Oh, here we go. 50 feet of 1-inch webbing. Now we use this as what we call hand line. If there's a spot that maybe is just a little bit more than we feel comfortable climbing down, we can tie this off and then hand over hand down into the area that we want to go into. I've used this so many times I can't tell you. Sometimes we also use it if we think our rope is just barely long enough to get to the bottom of a drift. We will use this to create the anchor, thus saving all of our rope for the actual downshaft explorer. So this I always keep with me. Used it so many times, it's just about ready to be replaced. It's been tattered and worn pretty good. So I don't ever go underground without that. Last pocket. So what have I got? This is my lunchbox. After eating way too many squished and mushed sandwiches and bananas that were more like puree, I've decided to go with a hard container for my sandwich or bananas. Throw a candy bar in here, whatever it is, keeps it from getting all squished and ruined. I also like to use hard water bottles. They don't run the risk of getting squished and popping the top off quite the same way the plastic bottles do. They're a little bit sturdier. I will say they're a little bit more weight. They're still real lightweight, but they're a little bit heavier than the plastic bottles. But either way, make sure you got plenty of water with you. You never know when the Explorer's going to go a little bit longer than you expected or had planned, and you don't want to be running out of water. So That's what I keep in my backpack. Thought you'd be interested in this. Yeah. Okay, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Seeing a little bit about what gear we take underground when we go. Most of the mine explorers that I know, pretty much the same set of gear. Now, next video, I'm going to do all the rope equipment that we use. The type of rope, tell you a little bit about our harnesses and our ascenders, all the gear that we use. Should be really interesting. And then looking forward a little bit farther, I'm going to start getting back out into the mines and doing some exploring. My back's healing up real well, and I think I'm good to go to do some more exploring, bring you guys along, have a really good time. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. If you want to join the underground crew, go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. Thanks a lot. Until next time.